Hello and welcome to Politics Today, reaching you live from our global headquarters here in Lagos. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. It's the weekend of the program, and we've been following political developments as they unfold across the country. And trust me, a lot is going on with attendant on the current. Our job is just to help you sift through all of that and keep up the pace as much as we can. But let's tell you that the Northern Governors Forum has asked the federal government to redouble its effort to tackle the menace of banditry, kidnapping, terrorism, and other related security challenges bedeviling the region. The governors also say they are working collectively to ensure that the tragic Nnamdi airstrike is thoroughly investigated, to compensate the victims and take corrective measures to prevent future occurrence. And they donated 180 million naira to the victims of the airstrike. In their submissions at the meeting in Kaduna State, the chairman of the forum and the governor of Gombe State, Nnamdi, says that security challenges have drastically affected the socioeconomic well-being of the people of the North, while his counterpart in Kaduna State, Mr. Obasani, believes time for talk shop is over. Urgent concerted action is what is required right now.
As governors of the 19 northern states, while commending the federal government for renewed vigor in the fight against insecurity, we believe that more needs to be done to bring an end to the menace of kidnapping, banditry, communal clashes, and terrorism bedeviling our region. Security and development are intricately connected, and we must approach them collectively. Without security, there will be no development, because investors can only invest in an environment where their assets and resources are secure. Critical infrastructure like roads and bridges, as well as human capital investment in education, healthcare, can only be flourished in an atmosphere of peace and security.
Our region has been grappling with challenges of insecurity. Our human development indices have been declining. For the Northern State Governors Forum to remain relevant, we must forge unity among our people and collaborate on issues of development.
Now, the chairman, House Committee on Foreign Affairs, Mr. Dumumuni Jibrin, says discussions are ongoing on how to resolve the ongoing political crisis in Kanu State. He disclosed this while speaking with State House correspondent after a meeting with President Bola Tinubu in the villa. The lawmaker explained that he proffered some recommendations to the president on how to ensure that peace and harmony is maintained in Kanu State.
Everybody who is a follower of international relations and foreign policy will agree that it's a well articulated foreign policy. And we assured him of all the necessary support from the National Assembly, and gave some advice on one or two things, how things can be improved, which of course my colleague has already delved into that. But of course, you know, he's my baba. Everybody knows my relationship with him. There's no how I will come here without also discussing politics. So I also had my own chat with him, and particularly on how to ensure that we continue to have peace and harmony in Kanu, and also proffer some recommendation in that regard. And hopefully, we believe that the burning crisis in Kanu, as regard the Kanu governorship seat, will be resolved amicably without prejudice.
Well, on a sad note, a former governor of Anambra State, Chief Chukwuemeka Ezife, has died at the age of 85. According to the family, Dr. Ezife, who marked his 85th birthday anniversary just last month, passed on at the Federal Medical Center in Abuja on Thursday evening. Chief Ezife can be described as one of the nation's nationalists of Igbo origin who played quite a prominent role in the clamor for the actualization of the June 12, 1993 election, which was won by late Chief M.K. Abiola and annulled by the regime of General Ibrahim Babangida. The President, Bola Tinubu, and the governor of his state, Chukwuma Soludo, have condoled with the Ezefe family at this particular time. Before we bring you a conversation that will be dwelling on what happened at the court today, as far as the case of Nnamdi Kanu is concerned, let's bring you our political roundup stories.
The First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, has met with wives of state governors from across the country. Senator Tinubu, during the meeting, underscores the need for the gathering, which is to update them on issues that affect the nation.
You should come out and just help people and say you understand and let them get help than just people just jumping off the bridge and say, I'm tired.
A member of the House of Representatives from Rivers State, Honorable Solomon Bob, says what is happening in the state is an embarrassment, especially because of the economic importance of the state to the country. Honorable Bob says the demolition of the State Assembly complex and the budget presentation to only 4 State Assembly members makes no sense. The federal lawmaker is appealing to Governor Siminalayi Fubara to step back and rethink his actions for the benefit of the state.
Both the presentation and the so-called passage is ridiculous. And then the complete destruction of an entire branch of government is unacceptable.
Meanwhile, some political leaders in the 17 wards of Abia local government area of Rivers State have thrown their weight behind Governor Siminalayi Fubara and Edison Ehie, urging them not to be distracted by the political happenings in the state. The group, led by the immediate past chairman of Abia local government area, Solomon Ebeleke, and former councillors and the state chairman of the National Youth Council of Nigeria, Chijioke Ihunwo, advised their kinsmen, the FCT minister, Nyesom Wike, and state lawmaker Martin Amewele to sheathe their swords. Some stakeholders in the Bayelsa State chapter of the All Progressives Congress have vowed to reclaim their governorship mandate from the People's Democratic Party in the state. The group presented a petition regarding the National Working Committee of the party at the National Secretariat of the party. The spokesperson of the group, Mr. Otiti Setionumea, appealed to the party's leadership to ensure that the mandate of the party is restored. Condolences have continued to pour in following the death of the former governor of Anambra State, Dr. Chukwuemeka Ezefe, who passed on yesterday at the age of 85 years. Anambra State Governor Professor Chukwuma Soludo has extolled the virtues of the former governor, whom he says will be missed for courageous attitude.
The next we can say is condolences to the family of Okwadike Ndibo, Dr. Chukwuemeka Ezefe.
Welcome back. The Supreme Court has nullified a judgment of the Court of Appeal that ordered the federal government to release the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Mr. Nnamdi Kanu, from detention. The Supreme Court ordered the continuation of the trial bordering on terrorism preferred against Mr. Kanu. And in a unanimous judgment prepared by Justice Garba Mohammed but read by Justice Emmanuel Agim, the 5-member panel of justices say the federal government acted, in their words, irresponsibly when it forcefully brought Kanu back to the country from Kenya against all known laws. However, the Apex Court held that it was not enough to divest the trial court of its jurisdiction to continue with the case. Let's take a listen to the counsels.
We had hoped that it would come our way, but it has gone the other way. It simply means that we have to go back to the High Court and get done with this quickly. We still have hope. We're not in despair.
By the grace of God,
yes, so
victory is assured.
Yes,
we
will lose a little time. We still have to go back. That's all it means. But I'm very consoled by what the Supreme Court said, that he ought not to have been treated the way he was treated. His bail ought not to have been revoked. His home ought to have been invaded. All that is a consolation to us. So we have hope.
This is victory to our administration of criminal justice, because it shows that once you are an accused person, once you are a defendant, no matter what excuse you want to bring to hide under the law to say that you should not be tried, the Supreme Court have expressly, unequivocally stated clearly that we don't have the legislation that will vitiate the court from trying a defendant that has committed a crime.
you must be tried for every offense you have committed. You saw that the court came very heavy on the security agencies where they have in any way, impaired on the rights, the fundamental rights of the defendant. However, our laws have made very clear provision for remedy where there's such infraction on the rights of the defendant. Then you can, such a defendant can go to the civil court and then seek for civil remedies for the violation of his fundamental rights. And that is why, of course, we have the fundamental rights enforcement.
Now, the councils were not the only ones that reacted to that judgment. The governor of Anambra State, Chukwuma Soludo, also says he respects the rule of law, but believes a political solution could also be considered in this particular case.
I am a governor who believes in the rule of law. And in the country today, when the Supreme Court speaks, that's final. And the Supreme Court, in its wisdom and judgment, considered that he should go for a fresh trial. We can only say, we don't question that, we don't challenge that, we'll just say the rule of law will prevail. And I think that will go through its judicial process. For me personally, and as everyone knows, that I've been aware of the judicial process. But in spite of that, I have persistently and consistently called for a political solution to this issue.
Now, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to this particular case between the leader of the proscribed IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, and the federal government. I'm going to introduce my guests, two senior advocates of Nigeria, in a moment. But let's walk you through some very simplistic way on how we got here in the first place. So first, Nnamdi Kanu was rearrested in Kenya and extradited to Nigeria by the federal government in June 2021. Now, he was arraigned at the Federal High Court Abuja before Justice Binta Nyako on an initial 4-count charge of treasonable felony, conspiracy to commit treasonable felony, terrorism, illegal importation of radio equipment, and defamation of the character of former President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, the charges were later amended to a 15-count charge on terrorism and membership of the proscribed group. Justice Binta Nyako at the trial court had in her ruling dismissed 8 out of the 15 charges, saying that Mr. Kanu had questions to answer in the remaining 7 charges. Of course, Kanu was not pleased, filed an appeal on the remaining 7 charges at the Court of Appeal. The court agreed with Kanu and struck out the case, and by implication, is free to go. And the learned silk will explain all of that. But the FG swiftly filed a stay of execution. Another panel of Court of Appeal Court justices sat and upheld FG's stay of execution. Now, the FG appealed to the Supreme Court on the quashed 7-count charge, insisting on continuation of trial at the Federal High Court. Today, the Supreme Court sat and agreed with the federal government that Kanu should go back to the Federal High Court to defend himself. However, the Apex Court frowned at how Kanu has been handled or treated by the federal government, but is at liberty to file a civil case against the federal government. So just a round-off or some kind of a sequence of how we got here in the first place. So my guest to explore all of these issues, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, right here with me in the Lagos studio, is Mr. Wahab Shitu. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
And also joining us virtually is another Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Paul Ananaba. Mr. Paul Ananaba, thank you so much for coming on the program. Mr. Ananaba, are you there? Can you hear me, sir? All right, Mr. Ananaba, if you can unmute so we can hear you. I know. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us on the program.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you.
All right. Let's start with you, sir. I'm sure you're quite familiar with this case. And just a legal perspective of what transpired today at the Supreme Court.
Well, the Supreme Court has pronounced. And essentially, the pronouncement of the Supreme Court can be categorized into 3 main aspects. The first aspect of the pronouncement, which is decisive, is that Mr. Nnamdi Kanu is requested to go back for his be arraigned on respect of the 7 counts, to go and face his trial in respect of the 7 counts earlier decided by the trial court. That's the first one. The second question, which is also very instructive, is to also say that the federal government can be, the way the federal government handled the deportation of Mr. Nnamdi Kanu outside the country to come and face the trial, offense against best practices, actually slammed the federal government for the way and manner it handled the deportation. And also cautioned that is likely to affect, that the federal government henceforth ought to be aware, ought to be sensitive about its image locally and internationally. That's also a strong indictment. The third one is to say, the bail, that it was wrong of the trial court to have revoked the bail of Mr. Nnamdi Kanu following the invasion of his residence by law enforcement agents. So those are the 3 key aspects. But as it is now, what is significant about the pronouncement of the Supreme Court is that Mr. Nnamdi Kanu is now requested to go and face his trial. Now, the question you want to now say is, okay, that is what the Supreme Court has decided. And once the Supreme Court has spoken, that's the final court. There's no appeal. You cannot appeal against the pronouncement of the Supreme Court. That's the law. And I must also say that the Supreme Court correctly interpreted the law. Because it's just like the analogy one can give to this is the issue of stolen evidence. If you steal evidence, which is relevant in a court of competent jurisdiction, the fact that that evidence is stolen does not derogate from its admissibility. So you cannot say because the evidence was stolen, then it is not relevant. That's Section 14 of the Evidence Act. So as far as the law is concerned, the Supreme Court, the apex court, has correctly interpreted the law the way it should be interpreted. But the question that we should ask is that how do we deal with the Nnamdi Kanu situation? I'm in favor of a unified country. I'm in favor of a country that is united, a country that will... The Nnamdi Kanu situation must be handled very carefully. And this is a new regime. I'm in favor of taking a closer look, notwithstanding the case as pronounced by the Supreme Court. It's a very sensitive case. The governor of Anambra State mentioned the issue of adopting a political solution. I think that also should be on the table. Yeah. But I said you want to stop me here because I have some other, clarifications I want to make. But I can. But
on the case, right?
On the case.
Yes, but we're going to come to some of the things you're already speaking about. But I wanted to get the perspective of Mr. Paul Ananaba. Mr. Paul, I'm sure you've had the perspective of the learned Silk, your colleague, on this particular issue. I don't know what your interpretation or your perspective is as far as what transpired at the Apex Court is concerned today.
All right, thank you. Wahab Shitu, my brother, I greet you. I agree with Wahab Shitu largely to say that the Supreme Court is final, not because it is infallible. It is infallible because it is final. You have given a rundown of a run-off to where we are today. Really, the expectation of many Nigerians, it was clearly that Nnamdi Kanu will go home a free man today. So it is that may have thrown this to the front burner. And I go further to say that this case does not turn only on law. If it turns only on law, then it would have been a different thing if it was turning only on law. It is both law and security. Is so sensitive, particularly for those from the Southeast and some other people who believe in the cause of Nnamdi Kanu. When you take that into the international law balance, you begin to talk about whether an act by a group that are asking for self-determination is a crime or not, even starting with the OAU Charter and down. So you see that in Africa, we begin to look at the jurisprudence of the fact that because we needed independence, then some of those acts will be considered not secession or treason or treasonable felony, but really self-determination. So what I want to draw from that is, yes, the Supreme Court has made the point that the decision that, yes, contrary to the decision of the Court of Appeal, that Nnamdi Kanu should face those 7 charges. Remember, the Court of Appeal had dismissed those charges. But the Supreme Court also made the point that the federal government was wrong in the way they handled this. Now, asking a person who has been in detention for all this while and whose detention is causing some discomfort to go back to a civil suit whilst in detention is of concern to me. I believe that the Supreme Court had all the powers, has inherent powers to take any decision in the best interest of the country. It's actually a policy court. So my expectation would have been, having found that the way the arrest was done wasn't approved by the Supreme Court, having found that the invasion of Nnamdi Kanu's residence and all that wasn't acceptable, I had expected that, yes, Nnamdi Kanu should stand his trial, but the Supreme Court also had the right and the powers to have granted him bail upon certain conditions. That way we de-escalate, because law is an instrument of social engineering and re-engineering. And I want to agree with Governor Soludo that perhaps it is now time, now the Supreme Court has spoken, that even revocation of the bail was wrong. If the Supreme Court had found that when the Supreme Court found that that bail was wrongly revoked, I believe that the Supreme Court would have made consequential law that, even in that respect, to say that that bail be restored. But Nnamdi Kanu will now be expected to go to court again to ask for restoration of bail. You see, the psychological content of law is important, so that a reasonable man will see that justice is not even delayed. I don't know how long it could take to file such applications. That's my concern. But the Supreme Court, I agree, was right in saying, okay, since we are set aside the portion of the 7 counts, go and defend this, the 7 counts before the Federal Court. But meanwhile, since your bail was wrongly revoked, your bail is restored on these conditions. Those are my perspective. However, the position of the Supreme Court remains the law and will continue to be the law. And I urge that every Nigerian should respect the decision of the Supreme Court and follow through rule of law. All I've said is my expectations But
all right, Mr. Nnamdi.
whatever the Supreme Court
Mr.
is the law.
Nnamdi, if I can butt in, so I can come back into the studio. I'll come back to you, Mr. Nnamdi. Mr. Shitu, I was listening to some of the things you were saying, and then for those who are not legal minds like yourselves and who want to understand why, the reason why he appealed in the first place is because 8 was quashed and they sustained the other 7, and that same court is where it's going back to. They will be wondering psychologically, what will be his expectation from that particular court at the end of the day? I don't know whether I made that question as plain, as simplistic as I can.
This is not how the criminal justice system works.
Which is why you need to educate us.
When you are arraigned for a specific number of counts in a criminal trial process, in this case maybe 15 or 20 counts, and at the end of the trial process, I mean, after the prosecution has led its case, or you file an objection to the jurisdiction of the court to entertain the charges, if the court finds, based on the evidence or the proof of evidence, that some of the counts are sustainable, then you will say that you have a case to answer. And those ones that are not sustainable, the court will say, oh, you are discharged and acquitted in respect of those counts, which is what the court has said here. The fact that the court has said you have a case to answer is not conclusive of guilt.
Okay.
It's saying that, oh, come and offer explanations to clear some gray areas in order to be able to either prove your innocence or your guilt. So the window, that does not distract from the fair hearing, mindset of the trial court. And all lawyers know this fact. In a criminal trial, you have an option to allow the prosecution to call all its evidence, and at the end of the case, when it is your turn, you either elect to defend and meet the case of the prosecution, or you choose to make an application of no case. In which case, arguments will be taken in respect of your application on no case submission, and the court will give a ruling in respect of each of the counts, which is what the court has done here. 8 of them were dismissed, 7 of them were upheld. He felt dissatisfied, and he appealed. The Court of Appeal agreed with him. But unfortunately, the Court of Appeal is not the final court. The state also appealed against the decision of the Court of Appeal. And the Supreme Court has today said, oh, go back and face your trial in respect of the 7-count charge. So what the Supreme Court has done is consistent with the law. Because, the Supreme Court is a court of law, is a court of justice. It's also a policy court. At that level, all issues, the records, everything will be considered. And you can see that the Supreme Court examined all the issues and made pronouncement. They examined the question of his illegal, deportation, and pronounced that that is clearly offensive, and that henceforth our country should be conscious of his image locally and internationally. That's a strong message coming from the Supreme Court. And secondly, when security agencies invade the premises of a suspect who is on bail, the trial court was not entitled to now revoke the bail after the man fled for his life. Again, that is a very strong statement. So on all issues, the Supreme Court has done justice to the matter. When somebody is alleged to have committed any offense, it remains an allegation.
Yes, sir.
He has the right to prove his innocence or guilt in a fair trial process. I think what we should advocate here are several options open to the federal government.
I was going to that because of time. So, because you have to look at it, this vis-a-vis the tension that has enveloped that region of the country where it comes from. We have the issue of IPOB, sit at home and all of that. So with all of this decision, I want you to put in perspective, what is the way forward?
Well, the way forward is one option is the rule of law option, which is to say, if somebody is alleged to have committed an offense, he should be allowed to go through the trial process, subject to the guarantee of his liberty. In this case, release him on bail, allow him to face his trial, but while he's facing his trial, don't tamper with his liberty. subject to assurances that he will make himself available, and subject to assurances that he will not commit any further offense, alleged offenses. That's one option. Okay. The second option that government can look at, in the spirit of unifying the country, government may look at the exercise of powers of the Attorney General under Section 174 of the Constitution that empowers the Attorney General to look at the case and decide whether in the overall public interest it is desirable either to continue the prosecution or discontinue the prosecution or enter a nolle, terminate the proceedings. The Attorney General can exercise that. But in exercising those powers, he has to have regard to public safety, public interest, paramount.
So are you saying, just so that before I go to Mr. Nnamdi,
I'm saying that all options should be considered.
So what I wanted to ask is, what advice, in case the federal government comes forward, what advice will you, if you have the chance, to give to Nnamdi Kanu to in terms of the agreement you should come up with the federal government?
First of all, Nnamdi Kanu must, because federal government is concerned about terrorism. Every serious government, allegations bordering on terrorism is a serious allegation. You must be prepared to renounce all, acts, or alleged acts of terrorism. You must give an undertaking. You must be ready to say, okay, you must also give an undertaking to make the peace. To ensure that, because peace is also very important to the federal government, because in the interest of the peace building process, federal government might want to engage elements who are close to Nnamdi Kanu, including governors from that region, to be able to see whether this matter can be amicably resolved in a manner that will not threaten the peace process, in a manner that will ensure that further acts of terrorism in that region or anywhere are not, anticipated or perpetrated.
Good point. Let me come to you, Mr. Nnamdi, as we begin to wrap up. This similar question I asked the Leonard Silk as well, just like you. We have to look at this broadly in terms of national security. If you were to advise both sides, both the federal government, he's giving some advice, both the federal government and Nnamdi Kanu and his team, what exactly would you be telling them just for us to have this national peace and move forward as a country?
Carlo, the Supreme Court has given a decision, and that is the final decision on that point. That is, you are still innocent. There are allegations against you. There are 7. Go and defend it. You had a bail. The judge revoked it. That revocation is wrong. Go back and take due process and ask for your bail. Supreme Court has already said that you are clearly more or less entitled to a bail. Get your bail, prepare your defense, and face up this charge. That is Nnamdi Kanu. For the federal government, I think that the country has so much concerns and worries that this matter ought to be looked at now after the pronouncements of the Supreme Court, showing that this has affected our image abroad, it has affected our image in Nigeria, invasion of property and fundamental rights of Kanu and even the family, beyond even him. So at this point, I think that the federal government should also take a reconciliatory position. And we will achieve more in the country if Nnamdi Kanu's case is taken out. But as a responsible government too, they should look for some guarantees. Since Governor Soludo has come up to say political solution is there, that can be looked at. And like my brother Shitu said, there are several options. The federal government can withdraw the charge. The Attorney General can enter a nolle and bring the case to an end. And it shouldn't be treated in such a way as if Nnamdi Kanu has been convicted and is now asking for a reprieve. No. Our constitution says that Nnamdi Kanu, even at his detention for all these periods and all that, is still innocent until proved guilty. That should not be denied him. So I look forward to him going, Nnamdi Kanu going on bail. I look forward to his also showing patriotism by ensuring that further issues do not arise from the way he will go about his affairs until this trial is done done with. So what am I saying? It's important.
Leonard, if I may butt in, that would be a great place to conclude our thought. Thank you so much for your time. We're totally out of time, so my sincere apologies. Mr. Paul Ananaba, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, joining us to speak on this recent Supreme Court pronouncement on Nnamdi Kanu's case, joining us virtually. Thank you so much. And also here in the studio in Lagos, Mr. Wahab Shitu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, for your very insightful thoughts on this. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Well, when we come back after this break, we'll zoom to what's going on in River State. It's been a series of incidents. We'll bring you the latest. Join us again. Welcome back. The River State Executive Council is depleting in number by the day, following a gale of resignation from the cabinet in the last 24, if you count 48 hours. Now, as at the last count, a total of 7 commissioners have bowed out of the cabinet, citing personal principles and reasons. And they include Commissioner for Education, Professor Prince Chinedu, Commissioner for Housing, Gift Warlu, Commissioner for Transport, Jacobson Mbina, Commissioner for Works, Kelly George Alabo, that of Social Welfare and Rehabilitation, Inime Aguma, a counterpart in Finance, Isaac Kamalu, while the State's Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Professor Zacchaeus Adango, was the first to announce his exit. The crisis is also narrowed down to the State House of Assembly, which is currently divided. Just 2 days ago, the state government ordered the demolition of the State Assembly complex, which has been under lock since a fire incident in August. The government says the demolition was based on the advice of consultants that the building was no longer habitable. The decision was, however, condemned by the group of 26 lawmakers believed to be loyal to the FCT minister. And that's what we'll be talking about today on the program. And we have been talking about this literally all week. So we're going to be joined by a member representing Andoni Opobo Nkoro Federal Constituency in the House of Representatives, Mr. Awaji Inombek Abiante. Thank you so much for coming on the program, Honorable.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
So, would we say, apparently, we understand, correct me if I'm wrong, that you held a solidarity march in support of the governor. Let's begin with that fact. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
I know you were there during the tenure of the Governor Nyesom Wike then, and now FCT minister. So what changed in quote-unquote loyalty?
What exactly is loyalty? And loyalty to who? Loyalty to what? Loyalty should be to, first, is echoing, isn't it? It's echoing. Loyalty should be first to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Loyalty to my constituents that elected me. Loyalty to Nigerians. So I don't understand what you mean by loyalty.
We wanted to be clear because it appears that, you know, it started with the House of Assembly, and then we didn't hear so much going on from other top leaders of the party in the state. At some point, we know the National Working Committee had released a statement. Mr. Debo had released a statement on their position on the defection. And with what we're seeing now, it looks like the lines are becoming clearer on who stands where. So in your defense of the governor, what case are you presenting?
I didn't hear what you said, so you can just go through that again.
That I just was explaining how this built up to this point. And the first question I asked you that you led a solidarity march in support of the governor. So, but generally, what all the times we've been asking people is neither here nor there on exactly what the issue is between the governor and, of course, his predecessor. So, can you hear me first? I understand there's a... Can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, sir?
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Apparently, we're having those technical glitches from technology, which I always say is not a silver bullet. But as soon as we get the Honorable Abia back, we will continue that conversation with him on the issue of River State. I have loads of questions to ask him as far as River State politics is concerned. He's been around, so I'm sure he's going to provide a lot of perspective and unravel some of the things we may not know as far as this crisis is concerned. But for now, we'll head over to our Buja studios, where we're being joined by our guests. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. And we're not talking Rivers politics. We'll be talking the issue of solid minerals in Nigeria. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the program.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
A quick one, sir. Nigeria is blessed with about, as at the last count, 44 natural resources or mineral resources. But we have been focusing literally almost exclusively on oil, which has affected the exploitation of this. And we've seen the Honorable Minister for Mineral Resources explaining the other day on what he thinks is going on in that sector. So let me begin by asking you, first of all, why do you think Nigeria is not zooming in into these untapped resources that can help us, build our FX reserve and generate more revenue for the country?
Well, I think I would have wanted you to have rephrased the statement, because if you had put in recent times, then it would see better. Considering that between 1975, 1969 to 1975, the mining sector that you talked about led to industrial growth. It was the industrial flagship. It was the thing that led to the establishment of seaports, of rail lines, with a special focus on the Port Harcourt seaport. So we have not always had the mining sector sleeping. It is only in recent times, or probably with the fixation of oil, that came in the 60s that, made it to take a backseat. The mining sector has always contributed, and like I said to you, you can check it statistically, 12% to GDP on real terms, year on year, from about between 1965 to 1975. Now, having said that, it is not as if the sector has always been sleeping. But what has happened is that over the years, a lot of policy somersaults, a lot of maybe maladministration, a lot of misunderstanding of what solid minerals could mean to us. But it's also important to state that there's never been any economic development document generated in Nigeria starting from the needs that didn't identify solid minerals as a major pathway to economic diversification. So the fixation on oil probably could be because it had a lot of foreign attraction vis-a-vis buyers, vis-a-vis credit, vis-a-vis infrastructure development. Okay, we were able to raise more money, selling oil. That was a lot easier, if you may, to dispose of than the mining sector that had probably a longer gestation period. That could be one of the reasons.
Yeah, just because of the want of time. Just one quick last question for you. If you were to advise the government, which I know you are doing as much as you can, but this is for the benefit of the public, what policy framework do you think we should rejig immediately to begin to see a change? As you said, it was there, but you said in recent time is not as much as it's supposed to be. What do you think should be done as quickly as possible to exploit this?
First to be
2 minutes.
First to be to build synergies, okay, between the sector and the sector off-takers. And what would this be? At the back end will be the resources, at the front end will be the products. Okay? The moment you build these synergies, first and foremost, there is nothing that you do in infrastructure development that is not, based on the mining sector. None. From your road infrastructure to your railway infrastructure to your transportation, to everything you can think about. But you see, I can also publicly say this, just from the policies of the Federal Ministry of Steel, an indigenous Nigerian company called the Niger Steel is actually bringing an investment of about $500,000 to establish a steel plant in Niger State. This is just one of a few. I mean, in less than 100 days of that steel policy, or that ministry being created. So it's not all that door. But, to answer your question directly, if I were, just like I am, to advise government, what we'll do is to quickly develop a policy that ties job creation, that ties infrastructure development to mineral resources exploration, exploitation, and beneficiation. The moment you do that, then you're good to go. That will be it.
Mr. Emeka Okengu, consultant to the House on Solid Minerals. Thank you so much, although we don't have so much time to accommodate the conversation. But definitely, this is a conversation we will expand in the future. Thank you for coming on the program. Thank you so much for your time.
Not a problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. I did tell you that as soon as we get back, our Rivers guest will go back to him, and I understand he's back. Honorable Awaji Nnamdi Abiante, member representing Andoni Opobo Federal Constituency. So let me establish first. Can you hear me clearly, sir?
Yes, I can.
Okay, let's get back to that particular conversation before we had that technical glitch. So I'm wondering, where do you see all of this going? Because it looks like there's no end in sight. I'll give you the reason at this moment. First, it started with maybe undercurrent, then it went full-blown, and then we saw the president came to intervene, and they had a meeting. I mean, the predecessor, the governor and his predecessor, and we thought things were resolved. Before long, things escalated further, and recently, look at what happened. The 26 or 27 members defected. The house was demolished, saying for structural reasons, and then we had 4 members sitting, passing an appropriation bill. The other people met, amending the laws of the local government to take powers out of the hands of the governor to dissolve local government. And it's just been, and today I observed that when the governor went to Ikwere local government to commission or flag off the 20,000 housing units starting as a very landmark project of his, the local government chairman, who is believed to be loyal to the FCT minister, was not there. So now cabinet members are resigning in their numbers. So where is this going?
Thank you very much. You started by saying that where does loyalty or loyalty? The issue of loyalty is to the Constitution, to the people that elected you, and to Nigerians. Then you have raised the issues. These issues of demolition of the chambers, the number of lawmakers who sat, and those who sat, and all of that. First, the issue of the chambers. Even before the exit of the immediate past governor, on the day that he commissioned the residential quarters of the speaker, he brought to the attention of all of us that the chambers indeed cannot stand the test of time. It has leakages all over, and And there has been a recent issue of whether it was burnt or there was an explosion. And it failed an integrity test. So nobody would want to expose himself to that danger. Is there a history of having to reconstruct, having to rebuild public assets? The answer is yes. The Mile 1 market has been brought down and reconstructed. The fruit garden has been brought down and reconstructed. The assembly quarters have been brought down and reconstructed. So what is the difference?
The difference perhaps is what
public assets. When they had challenges, they had to be rebuilt. And in rebuilding, you have to bring down the previous structures that are there.
All right, Honorable Abiante, I understand we don't have so much time. If I may butt in, sir, I just wanted to squeeze in one more question. I apologize that you are not landing on your thought.
You have not allowed me answer the questions you are throwing at me.
Yes, because
you said it's echoing.
Okay. Sincere apologies, because we don't have so much time. So I wanted to squeeze this, if you can do it in 30 seconds. If you just advise on what can be done to restore peace to the state, because that's what everybody's looking at as a big picture. What can you advise right now? 30 seconds, please.
Is anybody at war? Some members have decided to leave the duties that were assigned to them. The Constitution is very clear. The Supreme Court has made a decision in that if you leave your political party upon which you were elected, when there is no division, you lose your seat.
All right. Honorable Abiante, I want to thank you for coming on the program.
As it stands today, we have members who were former members of the House of Assembly. On their evolution, they decided to leave, and they are gone.
Honorable,
they should be courageous, man enough to stand up to what they have chosen, to the choice that they have made.
Honorable Abiante, thank you so much. We do not have so much time anymore. I wish I could have so much time with you. Thank you so much for coming on the program, Honorable Nnamdi Abiante, member representing Andoni Pobonkora in the Federal House of Representatives. And that'll be it on the program. So thank you so much for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Ozanga. God bless Nigeria.